kuvvetle muhtemel Halep dediğimiz, İdlib dediğimiz, Hama dediğimiz.
On December 13th, Turkish President Recep Erdogan, speaking to members of the Turkish Justice and Development Party, said, "What would have happened if the First World War had not redefined the borders in our region? The cities that we call Aleppo, Idlib, Hama, Damascus, Raqqa would have been our provinces, as would Antep, Hatay, and Urfa." Reminding that Aleppo and Damascus were Turkish is an important political message. If Erdogan had said something like this in early November, it would have been mere demagogy in the style of an alternative history, but today it is not. The following words belong to the Prussian King Friedrich II. If you like someone else's province, and you have enough strength, occupy it immediately. As soon as you do this, you will always find lawyers who will prove that you had the right to the occupied territory. Most of Syria is already controlled by groups that are more or less affiliated with Ankara and dependent on Turkish aid. Historically, the entire territory of Syria was part of the Ottoman Empire, which was just over 100 years ago, which is not much by historical standards. In addition, there is a precedent from 1939, when the Sanjak of Alexandretta, which was a French mandate and was supposed to become part of Syria, was annexed to the Turkish Republic as a result of political and diplomatic intrigue. Thus, Erdogan's reflections on history in the context of Syria should be taken seriously. This does not mean that in a week, Turkish regular troops will enter Syria, and the flag of the Turkish Republic will be raised over Damascus. If the Turkish intervention deep into Syria occurs, political and ideological grounds will be given for this fact. For example, if the groups that came to power in Syria do not share power and start to cut each other after some time. There have been many times in history when, having overthrown the current government, yesterday's rebels started a war with each other. According to Orientalists, the opposition to the Assad regime included about 100 different armed groups, and if a serious mess begins in Syria, it will resemble a war of all against all, and it will not be completely clear who is opposing whom. In addition, Syria is a multi-ethnic and multi-confessional country. Some religious and national communities have their own self-defense forces. Others can create them if they have time. Therefore, in the event of a general war, the chaos in Syria will be incredible. The Turkish government will take advantage of this. It will declare the need to provide the citizens of Syria with a safe and normal existence. First, the Turkish army will enter the territories engulfed in civil war. Then the officials, peace will be established, and life will begin to return to normal. And in a year or two, a plebiscite will be held, in which, for example, the residents of Aleppo and Damascus will vote for joining Turkey, simply because they understand that the alternative to this is a new civil war. Turkey will include as much Syrian territory as it can at that time. In this context, chaos in Syria is what Turkey needs for its army to act as a savior. Although this is a very dangerous game that can have the most unpredictable consequences for the entire Middle East. While the Turkish leader is only using groups dependent on him in Syria and talking about history, the Israeli leadership is already using the regular army to create a buffer zone in Syria and destroy aircraft, ships, and weapons depots of the Syrian army, all that remains of Bashar al-Assad's army. In addition, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel will forever retain control over the Golan Heights. No matter how negatively Tel Aviv treats the Assad regime, it was an old and understandable enemy for Israel, from which it was clear what to expect. The Israeli Air Force from time to time struck targets in Syria that it considered Iranian, but Damascus never responded to this aggression, fearing a major war with Israel. But those who came to power in Syria now are incomprehensible characters for Israel. Despite the fact that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham leader Abu Muhammad al-Jalani declares friendship with Israel, apparently the Jewish state does not believe him and continues to destroy weapons and ammunition on Syrian territory. But here's what's also interesting. The heads of 6 Druze villages in southern Syria have declared their desire to join the State of Israel and reunite with the Druze villages and their families who live on the Israeli side. We want to be under Israeli rule and ask Israel not to leave the villages in southern Syria. We are talking about the buffer zone that Israel has created, but the authorities of the Jewish state say that this is a temporary measure. Such appeals from the heads of Druze villages may give Israel grounds to make the buffer zone permanent, and over time to legally annex it to Israel. The arguments are clear. We cannot leave the people who come to us for help to their fate. This will anger the Druze, the citizens of Israel, so we are obliged to protect the Syrian Druze. It is possible that after some time Syria will become an arena for confrontation between the Israeli and Turkish armies. For example, Syria will fall apart into several states, some of which will be controlled by Turkey, a kind of transitional stage before incorporating them into its republic. But these states will have a conflict with Israel. The Israel Defense Forces, after massive air and artillery strikes, will enter the territory of such a power. Turkey, in order to save its clients, will also introduce troops, as a result of which clashes between Turkish and Israeli soldiers could lead to a major war between these countries. Also, do not forget about the Kurdish issue. The Kurds are currently patronized by the United States, but it is doubtful that Washington will be ready to defend Syrian Kurdistan from the Turks. After all, they are NATO allies. But Israel, with the tacit blessing of the United States, may take on this mission if the Turks, in the opinion of the White House, go too far and want to include Kurdish lands in Syria in their territory. A limited Israeli contingent may enter Kurdistan in order to guarantee the creation of some kind of state entity there. Israel has long believed that if an independent state is created there, it could gain an ally in the Middle East. If Kurdistan is ever created within the borders that the Kurds are interested in, then the territories will be taken away not only from Syria, but also from Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. Therefore, Ankara is suppressing the beginnings of Kurdish statehood wherever it can. But it is unlikely that Turkey and Israel will be able to take control of all of Syria. When French colonial officials drew the borders of the future Syrian state, they initially included lands with a very heterogeneous ethnic and religious population in it, so that there would always be tension within the state, which, according to Paris's plan, would allow France to maintain political and economic influence in the country and the region. The French did not maintain their influence, but potential conflicts between communities remained. And if chaos begins in the state, then the communities of Syria will try to take as much land and sovereignty as they can.